Welcome back to Haunted Southern Ohio, the show where forgotten objects whisper, abandoned places breathe, and the past refuses to stay silent. I'm your host, Chloe, and tonight we're returning to one of the most mysterious and unsettling corners of Ohio folklore. This episode is based on haunted objects of Ohio, cursed artifacts, creepy legends, and true Ohio stories by Mark H. Rowe. And if you thought Moonville Tunnel was the only haunting in that forgotten ghost town, think again. Mark, welcome back.
Thanks, Chloe. Moonville is one of those places where the land holds on to stories, and the crying doll is one of the strangest, saddest, and most unnerving legends tied to that abandoned community.
For listeners who may not know the full history, what was Moonville?
Moonville was a tiny mining town deep in the woods of Vinton County. It had a handful of houses, a school, a saloon, and of course, the railroad tunnel. Over time, the town faded away. The buildings collapsed, the tracks were removed, and the forest reclaimed everything.
What led to its decline? Was it a sudden event or a slow decay?
Today, only the tunnel remains, but the land still feels inhabited by memory, by tragedy, and by stories that refuse to die. It was a slow, inevitable decline. The coal seams that the town was built on started to run thin. As the mining operations became less profitable, families began to move away, seeking work elsewhere. The railroad, which was the town's lifeline, eventually ceased operations in that area, and with no way to get goods in or out, Moonville was effectively cut off. It was a gradual fading, a town swallowed by the forest.
And somewhere in those woods, someone found a doll. Let's talk about the object itself. How was the crying doll discovered?
The story goes that a group of hikers exploring the old Moonville town site found a small porcelain doll half buried near the foundation of what used to be a house. The doll was old, cracked, weathered, with faded blue eyes and a dress that had turned gray with age.
What was the doll made of? Can you describe it in more detail?
They picked it up, brushed it off, and carried it with them. That's when the strange things started happening. It was a classic porcelain doll from the late 19th century. Its face, though cracked, had hand-painted features, rosy cheeks that were now faded, and those piercing blue glass eyes. Its hair was likely human hair, which was common for dolls of that era, but it was matted and tangled. The dress was simple cotton, but you could see remnants of fine lace at the collar and cuffs, suggesting it was once a cherished possession.
What kind of strange things?
They said they heard crying, soft, distant, like a little girl sobbing somewhere in the trees.
Let's dig into that. What exactly did the hikers experience?
They described it as a faint, muffled cry, like a little girl trying not to be heard. At first, they thought it was an animal, but the sound followed them.
Followed them?
Every time they stopped walking, the crying stopped too. When they started moving again, it returned. One of them swore the doll felt warm in their hands, even though the air was cold.
That's unsettling.
It gets worse. When they reached their car, the crying grew louder. They panicked, dropped the doll on the ground, and drove away. The crying stopped instantly.
Do we know who the doll belonged to?
Not for certain, but Moonville had its share of tragedies, accidents, illnesses, and the dangers of railroad life. Children lived there, families lived there, and dolls were common in the late 1800s.
Right.
And some believe the doll belonged to a little girl who died young. Others think it was left behind when the town was abandoned, and some believe the doll absorbed the grief of the land itself.
A vessel for sorrow. Is there any connection between the crying doll and the other famous ghosts of Moonville, like the Brakeman or the Lavender Lady?
Exactly.
Let's talk about the crying itself. Is it always heard when the doll is found?
Not always, but the stories are consistent. People who pick up the doll or even touch it report hearing crying. Sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's sharp, like a sudden wail, and sometimes it sounds like it's coming from inside the doll.
Mm-hmm.
One witness said the doll's eyes seemed to glisten as if tears were forming.
That's the kind of detail that stays with you. How do you respond to skeptics who might say the crying is just the wind or the mind playing tricks in a spooky environment?
It does.
Does the doll ever move on its own?
There are stories. People say they set it down and found it facing a different direction. Others say it was lying on its back, and when they looked again, it was sitting upright. One person claimed the doll's head turned slightly while they were holding it.
Wow.
But the most disturbing reports involved the crying. People say the sound grows louder the longer you hold a doll, like it's reacting to being touched.
Almost like it remembers something. In your research for haunted objects of Ohio, have you come across other items that carry this kind of emotional weight?
Or someone.
There's something uniquely haunting about abandoned toys. Why do you think that is?
Because toys are tied to innocence, childhood, love. When you find a toy in a place like Moonville, a place marked by hardship and loss, it hits differently. It feels like a fragment of a life interrupted.
That makes sense.
And when that toy seems to cry, it becomes a symbol of grief that never healed.
So where is the crying doll now? Is it in a museum or a private collection? Have there been recent sightings or experiences with the doll?
Yes. Paranormal investigators have reported hearing crying near the old town site, even when they never found the doll itself. Some say the crying echoes through the trees. Others hear it near the tunnel entrance.
Really?
One investigator claims she heard a child's voice whisper, "Don't leave me," right before her recorder shut off.
That's chilling.
Moonville has always been active. The doll is just one piece of a much larger story.
What advice would you give to amateur ghost hunters or curious visitors who want to go to Moonville looking for the doll? You've spent a lot of time in Moonville. Have you ever experienced anything connected to the doll?
I've never seen the doll myself, but I've heard the crying. Once, while walking near the old town site, I heard what sounded like a child sobbing. It was faint, but unmistakable.
You heard it yourself.
When I stopped walking, the sound stopped. When I moved again, it returned. It felt like the land was grieving.
That's powerful. Why do you think the crying doll legend has lasted so long?
Because it taps into something universal: loss, memory, and the fear of being forgotten. Moonville is a place where lives were lived and lives were lost. The doll becomes a symbol of that lingering sorrow. And because people keep hearing the crying, as long as the sound continues, the story will too.
Mark, thank you for guiding us through one of the most haunting and emotional legends tied to Moonville. If you want to explore Moonville for yourself or dive deeper into the stories behind it, you can find Haunted Objects of Ohio, Cursed Artifacts, Creepy Legends, and True Ohio Stories by Mark H. Rowe. To learn more about Mark's work, upcoming projects, and the stories behind the stories, visit markhrowe.com. And while you're online, be sure to follow Mark on his Amazon author page so you never miss a new release. Until next time, walk softly, listen closely, and remember that some objects never stop crying. Good night.